following content depicts found footage, audio recordings, and assembled files. The events, locations, and individuals depicted are fictional to ensure anonymity. Viewer discretion is advised. Share your experiences and reactions in the comments. They may be used in future studies of unexplained phenomena.
I used to think the back room was just another forgotten part of the house. The kind of place you avoid because it smells like damp wood and old secrets. But now, every time I hear my son laugh alone in the dark, I think about what we brought with us when we moved, and what followed us out. After the divorce, I just wanted peace. Somewhere quiet, with enough space for Daniel to play and for me to feel like things were starting over. The house we found was old, but charming high ceilings, wooden floors, and a long corridor that led to a back door I never used. Daniel loved it immediately, especially that corridor. He'd run up and down it, his little feet tapping on the wood, giggling as if someone was chasing him. I told myself it was just his imagination. Kids find magic in empty rooms. At night, though, I would hear him whispering softly to someone. One night, as I passed by his room, I heard him laugh and say, "No, Mr. Blue, I can't go there now." I stood frozen at the door. The lights were off, but his smile glowed faintly in the dark. I didn't dare ask who he was talking to. It started as something harmless, or at least, I wanted to believe it was. Daniel would talk about Mr. Blue all the time, at breakfast, in the car, even during bath time. "He lives down there," he said once, pointing toward the back corridor. "He has eyes that blink really slow." I laughed it off, pretending to be intrigued, but the way he described him like someone real, someone he had met, made me uneasy. That night, when Daniel was already asleep, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, uneven, like someone dragging their feet. I went to check, but the hallway was empty. The air felt colder there, and the smell of damp was stronger than ever. When I returned to Daniel's room, he was crying in his sleep. He mumbled something. "I almost didn't catch," he asked. Mad because he came in without asking. After that night, the house started changing. Lights would flicker, sometimes go out completely, always near the back corridor. Daniel would say strange things. At random moments, once, while coloring, he murmured, "The light burned out down there." Another time, he looked up at me and said, "You forgot the other Daniel." I was exhausted, emotionally stretched thin. Divorce, new home, new job. I blamed it all on stress. But something in the walls of that house felt alive. The silence seemed to listen. Then one afternoon, while cleaning near the back corridor, I noticed a loose panel by the floor. I pulled it open, expecting dust and nothing else. Instead, I found a small blue toy car, covered in dirt. It looked too old to be Daniel's. When I held it up, the smell of earth filled the air. Daniel appeared behind me, smiling faintly. "That's his," he whispered. "Whose primera?" "Ask it." He pointed toward the dark corridor. "Mr. Blue." Daniel had started talking to Mr. Blue every night before bed, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in that soft tone children use when they know they're being listened to. I tried to ignore I'd imaginary friends. We're harmless, but one night, as I passed by his door, I heard another voice. Deep, slow, too deliberate to be his. It was answering him. I froze. The sound came from the dark corner of his room, a place the nightlight never reached. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely breathe. When I finally pushed the door open, Daniel was sitting on the bed, eyes wide, staring at the corner. There was no one there. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me calmly, then tilted his head as if listening to something I couldn't hear. "He doesn't like it when you come in without knocking," Daniel said. That night, I locked the door to the corridor. It didn't matter. The next morning, it was open again. I called an electrician to fix the constant flickering near the back of the house. He was an older man, quiet, the kind who'd seen too many strange houses to care about one more. But when he reached the end of the corridor, he paused. "Your wiring's not back here," he said. "This wall, it's not supposed to be here." He tapped it, and the sound came back hollow. Within, an oor, part of the plaster, was gone and banied. A door appeared. Small. Child-sized. Inside was a forgotten room, dust everywhere, but beneath it blue toys, faded drawings, and on the wall, a mural of a tall blue figure holding hands with a faceless child. The air was thick and sweet, like something had been sealed in for decades. Daniel stepped in quietly, looking around like he knew the place. His eyes lit up when he saw the mural. "You came home?" He sighed softly. I couldn't stop thinking about the mural, or the way Daniel had said that. So I started researching the house's history. Records, old newspapers, anything. It didn't take long to find it. A boy named Daniel, who'd vanished from this address in 1979. No trace, no explanation. Just gone. The mother had described a strange figure the boy used to talk about. A man in blue who lived under the floor. That night, I sat beside my son's bed and asked, "Who is Mr. Blue?" "Daniel." "What does he want?" He turned to me slowly, his eyes darker than I remembered. "He wants to see what's inside you." I couldn't sleep after that. When I finally did, I woke up to the sound of running water. Daniel's door was open. Inside, he sat on the floor, covered in blue paint. It dripped from his hands, his face, his hair. When I asked where it came from, he smiled. Mr. Blue helped me. Daniel changed almost overnight. He barely spoke, kept the curtains shut, and slept most of the day. When I tried to open his window, he screamed an animal sound I'd never heard from him before. His skin looked pale, almost gray in the morning light, and his voice was distant, as if echoing from somewhere else. I started hearing noises beneath the floor, soft thuds, the creak of movement, sometimes laughter, muffled and low. Once, I pressed my ear to the wood and heard two voices whispering. One of them sounded like Daniel's. The other, slower, older. That night, I caught my reflection in the mirror across from his bed. Behind me, just for a moment, stood a tall figure, blue-tinted, featureless except for the faint glow of eyes that blinked too slowly. When premeditated, there was nothing there. But Daniel smiled in his sleep and whispered, "He likes you now." I couldn't take it anymore. Whatever was in that house wanted my son, or maybe it already had him. I grabbed a flashlight and went down to the walled room myself. The air grew colder with every step, heavy with mold and something metallic. When I reached the doorway, the smell hit me wet. Paint and earth. The walls pulsed faintly, slick with moisture, and streaks of blue ran down like tears. My light flickered. On the floor lay the small blue car again, perfectly clean this time, as if freshly washed. Tiny footprints trailed from it, leading toward the far wall. I followed them, trembling, until I heard it. "Mum?" Daniel's voice called softly. "Mr. Blue wants to show you something." The flashlight died, and then, from the other side of the wall, something moved. I don't live there anymore. We moved months ago, far from that house, far from that room. Daniel doesn't talk about Mr. Blue now, but sometimes I hear him whispering when he thinks I'm asleep. Soft giggles, one-sided conversations. It's quieter here, but never silent. When I pack away his toys, I still find specks of blue paint under his fingernails. Sometimes, I wake to see him sitting on the edge of his bed, staring into the dark, as if listening. The day we left the old house, he watched the movers load the last boxers. The sun was setting, and he waved toward the back of the truck. I asked who he was waving to. He smiled that same calm, knowing smile. "Mr. Blue's coming too." I looked inside the truck. Empty, but when the door shut, I swear I saw a faint, wet streak of blue run down the metal. When my brother died, The silence in the house felt like a body we couldn't bury. I thought time would heal that emptiness, but then my son started playing with someone who said he knew all the stories Raoul used to tell. That's when I realized, not everything that comes back is ready to leave again. I still remember the smell of rain from the day we buried Raoul. My brother's laughter used to fill every corner of this house, and now it was just echoes and dust. I tried to keep things normal for my kids, Lucas 8, and Clara 4. Lucas was the one who felt it the most. Raoul had taught him chess, patiently explaining each move as if the world depended on it. That night, I found Lucas sitting by the window, the chessboard set up between his knees. His small hands moved the white pieces the way Raoul used to. I didn't say anything, just watched him play against the empty side of the board. But later, when I passed by his room, I heard him laugh softly. He said, "Play again, Ankali." His tone wasn't playful. It was listening. Every night after that, Lucas arranged the board before bed. One side for him, one for someone else. He even placed an extra piece of blue pawn Raoul had painted years ago. When I asked, he said, "That's for Uncle Raoul. He comes when it's dark." At first I thought it was grief, imagination, maybe comfort. But soon I noticed the way he paused, as if waiting for moves only he could see. He nodded, whispered responses, sometimes even laughed at unheard jokes. One evening, I decided to stay and watch longer. When he finished, he carefully put the pieces back. Except, one pawn had moved forward on its own. I froze, staring at it under the dim light, realizing there were no drafts. No tremors, just that lonely pawn, standing too close to the other side. It started with small sentences Lucas couldn't possibly know. "Uncle Raoul said you cried on the road," he told me one morning while eating cereal. My hands went cold. Raoul's car had crashed on a rainy night, and I'd stood alone by the wreck, sobbing until dawn. No one else had ever seen that. "Another day," Lucas whispered. He remembers the smell of gasoline. I dropped the plate I was washing. I tried to explain it. A way coincidence, memory, imagination, but deep down, I felt that familiar presence growing stronger. Raoul had been kind, yes, but he'd also been controlling, protective in ways that sometimes frightened me. That night, I found Lucas asleep on the couch, murmuring in his dreams. His face was pale, lips trembling as he whispered, "Uncle, I don't want to play tonight." The chessboard sat beside him already, waiting. The nights started to feel longer. I'd wake up to faint clinking sounds from the living room like chess pieces tapping wood. At first, I thought Lucas was playing again, but when I checked, he was fast asleep, his small hand resting on the blanket. Yet every morning, the board was different. Pawns had moved. A knight was gone. Once, the king had fallen on its side, as if in surrender. One morning, Clara tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Uncle gets mad when the game stops." I froze. "What do you mean, sweetie?" She shrugged and pointed at the chessboard. He said Lucas forgot his move. That night, I stayed awake, pretending to sleep. Around dos alto m, I heard two voices in Lucas's room. One was his, the other, low, familiar, and heartbreakingly calm. My brother's voice, saying something I couldn't make out. My blood ran cold. I drove to the spot where Raoul's car had crashed. The weeds had grown tall, swaying in the cold wind. I parked and stood there for a long time, trying to feel something, peace, closure, anything. Ten primerasa, doblovit. Hef buried in the dirt, his old leather wallet. I hadn't told anyone about that road, not even Lucas, but he had described this exact place the night before, down to the crooked fence post. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was a photo roll teaching Lucas to play chess. When I got home, the mirror in the hallway was fogged, even though the air was dry. I wiped it with my sleeve. 2 small handprints appeared. As I stared, breath caught in my throat. A figure shimmered in the reflection, Raoul kneeling beside the chessboard, his face unreadable. And then, gone. Lucas changed. He barely ate, barely spoke. He spent hours staring at the chessboard, whispering things I couldn't hear. When I asked who he was talking to, he smiled faintly. He says, We'll finish soon. Then I can stay with him forever. My stomach twisted. That night, I grabbed the board, ran to the yard, and tried to burn it. The fire wouldn't catch, the wood damp as if soaked in something cold. Lucas screamed, begging me to stop. He doesn't want to leave, he cried. Then the lights flickered inside the house. Every bulb dimmed, and I heard a troll's voice, whispering my name, slow and deliberate. I dropped the board. Lucas collapsed in my arms, his skin icy to the touch, his body trembling as if he'd been caught in the rain. I called his name over and over, but he didn't wake. And Baname in the dark window, I swore I saw Raoul watching, smiling just enough to break my heart. That night, I dreamed of Raoul standing on the side of the road, the one where everything ended. His clothes were soaked, his voice broken. He said, "He's playing for me now. You have to stop the game." I woke up in a sweat, my heart pounding. The chessboard was on the table again, perfectly set. Only one piece missing, the White King. Lucas was asleep on the couch, breathing softly, his small hand resting on a pawn. I tried to move it, but it felt cold, almost sticky, as if something had been holding it. Then Lucas whispered, "Still dreaming," he said. "It's almost over. Just one move left." I turned toward the window when I heard the clink of a falling piece. The White King had tipped over on its own. In the reflection of the glass, I thought I saw Raoul's outline standing behind me, smiling like he used to when he won a game. I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I spoke aloud, facing the chessboard as if Raoul could hear me. "You can't keep him," I said, my voice trembling. "He's not yours anymore." The air grew heavy, dense, like the silence before a storm. The lamp flickered. 10 went out. I heard the faint scrape of wood as the pieces began to tremble. One by one, they fell, clattering against the board until only 2 remained upright. The Black King and a blue pawn. The sound stopped, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, the Black King cracked down the middle, splitting cleanly in 2. Lucas gasped and woke up crying, saying, through tears, he left, but he said he still wants to see you. I froze when I felt something roll against my foot. To blue pawn, Raoul's favorite. It's been months now. The house feels lighter, calmer somehow. Lucas laughs again, and Clara has stopped waking up in the middle of the night. I keep the chessboard packed away in the attic, though sometimes I think about throwing it out, but I can't. Every now and then, when the house is quiet and the night feels heavy, I hear the soft click of a piece being moved. Once, I even found the board half open, one pawn pushed forward. The blue one. I tell myself it's just the wind, or my imagination trying to fill the silence Raoul left behind. But deep down, I know better. Love doesn't die, it just waits for another move. I never believed in anything that couldn't be measured. I used to think monsters lived in people, not in the dark. But after what happened to my daughter, I can't switch off a light without wondering what's waiting when it goes out. Loda with 6 old curls, crayons, and impossible questions. She was the kind of kid who gave names to shadows on the wall. After a nightmare one night, she came to me trembling, saying a new friend told her a game to stay safe. She called her Mina. I played along. I thought it was her way of processing fear. "So, what are the rules?" I asked. She held up 3 fingers and whispered them like secrets. 1. Don't turn off the light. 2. Don't leave the room at night. 3. Don't look at her reflection. I laughed. It was imaginative. Sure, but harmless. That night, when I tucked her in, I turned off the lamp to show her there was nothing to fear. She screamed, pure panic. Her tiny voice broke through the dark. "You broke the first rule." I spent half the night holding her, promising there was no such thing as Mina. The next evening, I made sure every bulb in the room worked. I even joked about the rules while changing the nightlight. Laura giggled again. I thought the spell was broken, but around midnight, I woke to her screams. The lamp had burned out, The air smelled of hot plastic, and she was locked inside the bathroom, sobbing. My ex-wife stormed into the house minutes later, furious that I was feeding her fears. I didn't even argue, maybe she was right. When I went back to Laura's room, something stopped me cold. The lamp was on again, glowing. But when I touched it, it wasn't plugged in. The cord dangled loose from the socket. Laura started whispering to herself during the day. Her tone was calm, almost reassuring, like she was comforting someone invisible. I'd hear fragments through her door. "It's okay, Mina. He won't turn it off again." One afternoon, she showed me a drawing. 2 little girls, holding hands. Identical. One had her eyes crossed out in black crayon. My throat went dry. "Who's this?" "Primera." "Ask it." She smiled, proud. "That's Mina. She looks like me, so she won't be lonely." That night, I passed her room and froze. The light was still on, casting her shadow on the wall. But it wasn't alone. A second one moved just a moment after hers, like it was catching up. And I swear, it waved. I began noticing it the night Laura didn't leave her room at all. Not for a drink, not for the bathroom. I asked her why, and she looked up with those wide, serious eyes and said, "Mina said if I leave without asking, she's alone again." My rational mind screamed coincidence, superstition, childish imagination. But I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. I set up cameras around her room, trying to prove she was alone, trying to prove there was nothing but shadows and blankets. But when I reviewed the footage, all I saw were her small movements, the dark corners punctuated by faint, flickering lights, as though something reflected in a way the lens couldn't account for. One clip froze me entirely. Laura sat on the edge of her bed, small hands clasped, whispering, "Can I go, Mina?" The voice that answered wasn't mine, wasn't hers. It was calm, deliberate, somewhere between the soft laugh of a child and the smooth tone of an adult. I paused the footage, heart hammering, and wondered if my logic had already failed me. Determined to confront what I thought was imagination, I began sleeping in her room. I wanted to see for myself, to catch the tricks of a clever child. But that night, the line between real and impossible blurred entirely. I woke to Laura sitting on the floor, facing the mirror. Her tiny hands moved as if interacting with someone beside her. Someone I couldn't see. I knelt, voice ready to correct, to guide, to demand reality, but she turned sharply, whispering, "Don't look." That's the third rule. I did anyway, and in that heartbeat, I saw her another Laura, identical except for the light in her eyes, smiling at me from inside the glass. My rational explanations scattered like dust. It was a perfect reflection, yet alive, watching, waiting. The room felt colder, the air thick, and my own breath seemed amplified in the quiet. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, caught between fear and disbelief. She whispered to her invisible companion, and I realized that what had been a game was no longer hers alone. I took her to a child psychologist, clinging to every word, every theory about dissociation or vivid imagination. I wanted to believe her mind was simply creating stories to cope, but home refused such easy explanations. Every time she played with Mina, lights flickered, shadows deepened unnaturally, and I swore I heard footsteps that didn't belong to any of us. One night, the power failed entirely. I followed the faint sounds across the hall to her room, heart pounding. A whisper called her name, soft but urgent. Then a scream, short and chilling, pierced the darkness. I ran in, and for a few terrible seconds, she was gone. Then I found her on the bed, fast asleep, peaceful as if nothing had happened. Yet the reflection in the mirror moved. It shifted, lingered, smiling just a fraction too long. My daughter was there, but so was something else. Something that had learned to imitate her perfectly. The rules I thought were games were already broken, and my understanding of the world was failing me piece by piece. I reached the edge of reason that night. Every precaution I had taken, every rational explanation, collapsed into a pit of dread. I decided to break all the rules at once, to end this nightmare. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and lit a single candle on the floor. Laura cried immediately. Trembling, She's going to take me. She's going to show you the dark. My chest tightened as the shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, twisting with the flicker of the candlelight. I moved closer, trying to comfort her, and that's when I heard it. A second voice, soft and unmistakably childlike, emerging from the cracks of the room. "Who are you going to save?" it whispered. The mirror along the far wall shivered, then cracked down the middle, splitting the reflection into jagged fragments. My rational mind screamed that it was impossible. The candlelight cast fractured shapes, and in each, I saw Laura's somehow multiplied, terrified and calm at the same time. I realized I wasn't in control. The rules, the game, the little girl, they were something beyond me, something that needed a player, and I had just forced the final move. When I finally reached the mirror, it was completely shattered. Splinters scattered across the floor. Laura lay unconscious on the carpet, limp, her small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. I bent over her and caught a glimpse in the shards. Her face, but blinking from the other side of the glass. My stomach churned. Everything I had believed imaginary friends. Childish Gims crumbled. Mina was real in a sense I could not measure. She had used my daughter as a reflection, as a bridge, as a host. I saw Laura's eyes flicker between the fragments, as if both she and something else occupied them at once. My hand shook when I reached toward her, and then the reflection smiled, raising a tiny hand that wasn't hers, and flicking the candle to life without touching it. I understood, finally. Mina had never been a friend. She had been a presence that required a mirrored child to exist. My daughter had not disappeared, she had been shared, held in the space between reflection and reality. Months later, I tell this story quietly. Laura is safe, yet changed. She avoids mirrors, refuses to sleep with the light off, and her laughter no longer carries the carefree innocence it once did. But sometimes, when I pass the doorway, I swear I see two shadows. One is hers. The other lingers slightly behind, a flicker in the corner of vision. The mirrors in the house remained covered. I have tried to explain what happened with science, with psychology, with reason, but the truth eludes any formula. I live with the knowledge that something moved between worlds that night, something I cannot fully claim to understand. When the lamps flicker now, I no longer think of electrical faults or wiring failures. I pause, heart racing, and wonder if Mina is playing again, waiting for the unbroken rules to bend. And I remember, my daughter never asked to leave. She never asked to leave.